I'm sure that y'all understand whatever we criticize Brittany Renner for, not every single woman in the entire world is capable of that. Now, for women to look at her actions and try to replicate them, it's damaging to men in a way that I can see why you having a manosphere platform, you would want to address. But then when you sit down and face to face with the devil, why not address it? But they seemed a little starstruck sitting across from Brittany Renner. Like they didn't want to say anything to get on her bad side. But the reality of the situation is you've built a platform. She's built a platform that clash. So thusly, if your fans see you sitting across from her and her fans see her sitting across from you, they expect that clash to come to a head. And she came prepared and y'all weren't. Like, the whole thing could have been avoided if they just addressed the fact that it's like you should have expected to be criticized from men in the same way that you were being championed by women. It's what is sitting uneasy with me, and like I said, after I'm done with this, I'm gonna go listen to the whole thing because maybe they redeemed themselves. They acted starstruck, they acted ignorant, they acted oblivious to what is actually going on. When the reality of the situation is, it's not about Fresh and Fit and Brittany Renner because none of us that are watching this is going to be in their situations. We're not at least in their situations now. The reality of the situation is how we're watching this reacts to how we interact with each other in our real lives, and that could be damaging to the demographic that they care about, men, and the demographic that women care about.
Got a lot of habits. Do a lot of laughing. Chewing shit.
So, Brittany Renner had to sit down with Fresh and Fit the other day. I think some specific things kind of stood out to me, though. First things first, I've made videos in the past being critical of Brittany Renner as well as Fresh and Fit. They've both made themselves easy targets. They're essentially two different sides of the same coin, and that was what was so troubling to me about it. Because Brittany could sit there on one side of the coin, criticizing the other side of the coin, and the other side of the coin just was so coy about it. They seemed as though they weren't prepared to progress the conversation. They were looking for her to essentially talk herself into a hole, and the reality of the situation is, I've even said this in past videos, Brittany Renner speaks very well. Like, she makes it perfectly clear that she's not a dumb girl. The problem that I personally have with Brittany Renner is not that men should be warned about Brittany Renner. It is what she did to a specific man that I don't believe was a man yet. I think that for you to be in the social standings that you are, to where, for instance, you could sit across from two people that have an entire platform dedicated to showing men essentially how to finesse women, and you could still come across so verbally dominant over them. I don't think that that's fair for you to employ that against a freshman in college, knowing that he's going to have certain resources that you may have wanted, and then you just be out. That's been my issue with Brittany Renner the entire time. I don't like how she did put PJ Washington publicly, because there may be aspects of the situation that I don't know, but it's just hard for me to be like, well, you were taken advantage of by this 18-year-old guy. Not this 18-year-old guy was taken advantage of by you. And it came down to a lot of Brittany Renner's like asking, what is their beef with her? And they're trying to tell her that she's not special, which is that's just inaccurate. And I've even said that in another video before. Brittany Renner made a book and mad people read it. So I feel like for y'all to sit there and try to make it seem like this is a conversation about men and women, and then using you guys and her as the example, it's just wrong. Because guys like I am an average guy. They said they're average guys. You're not average guys. You guys have a huge platform and you guys are monetized and everything like that. That's not normal in the same way as Brittany Renner. So for y'all to sit there and make it seem like y'all are just average guys having a conversation with just an average woman, that is dancing around the point. Because I'm sure that y'all understand whatever we criticize Brittany Renner for, not every single woman in the entire world is capable of that. Now, for women to look at her actions and try to replicate them, it's damaging to men in a way that I can see why you having a manosphere platform, you would want to address. But then when you sit down and face to face with the devil, why not address it? So when you're saying, oh, well, we're not responding, we just want to know, we want you to tell us who you are, you can't expect the accurate portrayal of what you are criticizing. Most of the time when people do things that are unfavorable, if you ask them their side of the story, you're going to get a more favorable response. Because nobody wants to take accountability. And that's the problem. I feel like Brittany Renner was more more capable of being accountable for her part in it than they were, and that's why it came across as more genuine from her, whereas they were just like, they looked bad. And I think that we need to address the reality, because Fresh and Fit weren't capable of it. Brittany, she levied herself in a way to where she built herself up to where she can do something as simple as approaching somebody who knew they were going to the NBA and still finesse them essentially out of what she says they were boyfriend and girlfriend, living together, this, that, and the third. That's not the impression that you were giving across to the public. So when the public has their personal opinions on it, you can't expect for the public to feel differently based on your personal views and situations that you weren't as boisterous in the public about. So I don't even understand why they were so adamant that she speak on the type of person she is. And I think that it was unfair for them to sit down and say, Brittany Renner, you're not special, when she's doing interviews and shit with Coach Prime and all that. Like, that's not something that average women are doing. So first of all, I'm going to address what is my personal issue with Brittany Renner. When you do have a boyfriend that's 18, 19 years old, and you're in your mid to late 20s and already established, that is a problem if you're going to levy that in a way that's going to cause harm to him, his career, his well-being, his social standing, all of that stuff. And when men, grown men like me who have been 18, 19 years old before see that, they're going to criticize it. But I've even said it in the past, I'm never ever going to come into contact with Brittany Renner. But if I did come into contact with a Brittany Renner, I would be more prepared to handle myself than a PJ Washington. Why? Not because I'm smarter than PJ Washington, not because I have higher social standing than PJ Washington. It's because I'm a grown-ass man who's dealt with mad women before. I understand what I want from women, and I understand what women want from me, and I understand how much of what I have I'm willing to leverage in order to get what I want from women. And if it gets to a certain extent where it's too much, I'll know where and how to draw a hard stop. Brittany Renner's built a whole platform. She's built a whole platform off of her interactions with specific men, whether they be famous, whatever the case may be with them. Famous, rich, athletes, all of that stuff. We know who Brittany Renner is. So for you to sit there across from her, finally having a chance to address why you think that's harmful to men, and you just don't say anything. Because I've said it before, Brittany Renner, she speaks very well, and that was a part of my problem with the video that she had sitting in her car, because as she started to try to verbalize what was done wrong to her, she would just, you see what I'm saying? That's mad annoying. Whereas halfway through it, when you're going to say the important part, you just stop talking and leave it to the imagination of whoever's listening to just put together what exactly you were saying, and whether or not you were right should be differentiated by their imagination. Yet, that's the exact same thing that Fresh and Fit are doing. They're not addressing what is really being said, what the real problem is. The real problem is not grown men when it comes, as far as it relates to Brittany Renner. And their whole platform isn't built on guys interacting with women like Brittany Renner. Now, she is going to be an example because, like I said, Brittany Renner's at the top of her field, and her field is one that is very desired by men. So there are women who are using her tactics as a blueprint for how they're going to interact with men. But the fact of the matter is, that's why everybody was criticizing PJ Washington, because as grown men, which is who typically Fresh and Fit are speaking to, we should be more prepared to deal with somebody who's maybe a little ill-intentioned towards us, whereas somebody who's a freshman in college wouldn't be able to. And I think that it wouldn't have been that hard for them to say that the problem they had with Brittany Renner was her taking advantage of somebody who was unprepared for her to take advantage of him. So now she comes out and she says everything she wants to say, and she says it to the best of her abilities, which is she's very able. And all of a sudden, they don't say anything. Of course, they're going to look like the bad guys, which I'm not giving them a. I think that let me address my biases first. I don't date men, so if what Fresh and Fit are saying is damaging to women, then by all means. However, I don't necessarily think it is. Because I think the same way how grown men should be prepared to deal with the Brittany Renner, I think the grown women should be prepared to deal with the Fresh and Fit. But I feel like instead of trying to navigate to a situation where they are two different things, they should just address the fact that they're two different sides of the same coin, and then use examples of how their actions in that position defer from her actions in that position, but I don't think that they were necessarily able to, because I don't think they're that different. So now you got all of Twitter championing Brittany Renner, that's wild, because she's still the same Brittany Renner. She hasn't done anything different. We knew she was articulate. We knew that she was able to use her words to essentially eat men alive. You know what I'm saying? I think that they walked into this situation very, very unprepared. And like I say, it's an 8-minute clip that I watched. So maybe they got it together, but they seemed a little starstruck sitting across from Brittany Renner. Like they didn't want to say anything to get on her bad side, but the reality of the situation is you've built a platform. She's built a platform that clash. So thusly, if your fans see you sitting across from her and her fans see her sitting across from you, they expect that clash to come to a head. And she came prepared and y'all weren't. So is Brittany Renner the bad guy as far as men are related? No. Like I said, Brittany Renner's mad entertaining. And I don't have any issues. I haven't spoken on any issues I have with how she's interacted with any man that wasn't named PJ Washington. So now if you want to say girls like Brittany, you have to associate the fact that girls like Brittany aren't Brittany. And that's another problem that I had. When people address the situation, because like I say, I don't care too much about what actually happens. The reality of the situation is, you got two sides of the story and the truth. The truth never comes out. I'm more uncomfortable with the way people react to what the story is, what the hot button topic is. You feel me? So when you sit across from somebody who's created so many hot button topics and you don't address anything specifically, you're just asking them to tell you lies, essentially. You don't think Brittany Renner is going to sit there and take a full culpability and accountability for every single thing that everybody's criticized her for, because it hasn't just been Fresh and Fit criticizing her. I don't even think Fresh and Fit could be like the head of who has been criticizing her. It's been a pretty collective effort from anybody who speaks to men to criticize Brittany Renner. So it's not just them, and she is not a part of a large sea of women. It's just there's a large sea of women that try to use her as a blueprint when they are not her. So I think that was the first mistake. It's sitting there trying to make it seem like Brittany Renner is just this average girl. And if you speak about her like she's this average girl and that PJ Washington was this average grown man, the demographic that you're speaking to, then you're going to lose that, because if that was the actual case, then there wouldn't be any problem. If Brittany Renner was just an average woman and PJ Washington was an average grown ass man who interacted with average women before. But the reality of the situation is she's not, and he wasn't, and he hasn't had the ability to interact with anybody like her before, and she leveraged that in a way to get a child. And yeah, people might have been lying about the child support and whoop, 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 this, that, and the third, but when he's coming out on social media talking about, I just want to see my son, when he's getting clowned by thousands of men publicly, that actually happened. So what the truth is in the matter doesn't really matter, because all we have is what the public, which is us, have reacted to it with. So that is just one thing that I think it was pretty damning from the beginning for Fresh and Fit. But also, you're not going to win a conversation with somebody that's emotional, at least from the outside looking in. So when she decided to turn up and start getting emotional, you just laughing, saying she's triggered. You look like you lost that conversation, because you look like you don't have anything to respond to it with. And yeah, you might have been being the bigger guy, because like she sat there and called y'all bitch ass niggas to y'all face. The respect's out the door at that point. Yet y'all are still trying to have a respectable conversation, still trying to give her a platform to speak on who she is specifically, when you can't expect for that to match up with what you've said about her, because what she's going to say about herself specifically isn't going to match up with the public perception of her, which is what you were speaking on. You're asking her to describe something that we haven't seen before, yet when you were criticizing her based on something that we did see. So criticize what we've seen. Nobody, I don't even know who Brittany has dated. I know who pretty much has appeared in her book, but nobody feels bad for them, because none of them got caught up in the way that PJ Washington did. None of them tied their social standing to Brittany Renner in the way that PJ Washington did. And my problem is the why. There's a specific reason why all these guys ran through Brittany Renner. She sat in her car and named the numbers, and none of them ended up getting caught up with her. It was just PJ Washington, and the reason is because he was young and dumb. And that's how Fresh and Fit are coming across. Young and dumb. Fresh and Fit, we all know that they make more content than just related to women. They make fitness content. They make content about financials and all that stuff. But the majority of their attention comes from their content related to women. And anybody who creates content knows that you have to lean into where your niche is. So yes, you're going to speak on things. And if you're going to speak on how men and women relate to each other and how men can protect themselves, then you're going to speak on Brittany Renner because, like I say, she's at the top of her field as far as this Instagram thought model goes. So then when you sit down and you sit across from her and you don't offer anything in response to her giving you legitimate criticisms, her coming for your platform, then and I don't even necessarily know that as she criticized them, they should have criticized her. They should have defended themselves in her criticizing them. But they're trying to leave this veil up that we can see through it. Whereas she's moved the veil completely away. She even addressed what people say about her, that she's a gold digger, this, that, and the third. And she even mentioned PJ Washington as her boyfriend. Like, she gave them, and like I say in this clip, she gave them all the ammo it took to really address what is that they were warning men against. But the reality of the situation is, you can't warn a PJ Washington because he doesn't have the frame of knowledge to understand what you're warning him against. It's like trying to teach calculus to somebody that doesn't know algebra. There are certain things that you just need to understand in life before you can understand other things in life. And most grown men have had experiences to understand calculus because they've gotten that algebraic experience. Whereas the way Brittany Renner found PJ Washington when he was essentially still a child, that's a problem. And that's what so many people criticized. Yet for some reason, y'all never even mentioned the fact that even when she brought up PJ Washington, that he was a kid. He was still a kid. So now y'all look bad again. She brought up the situation about why they're negatively favored in the media right now, which I didn't have anything to say about what they said about black women, even though I disagreed severely, because that shit was stupid. It was stupid, and there was no explanation that you guys could have offered to make it seem any different. There was nothing anybody could have said about it that made it seem like it was any better than what it was. And y'all couldn't transfer that same energy to her. Because there's nothing that she could say about the situation with PJ Washington that would make it any different. Because we have all been 18-year-old guys before. Think about whoever was the Brittany Renner of when you were 18. She could have taken advantage of you. And they never even addressed what they were warning men against. They were just so adamant in, you tell me who you are. So here's what we're warning men against. Women that are ill-intentioned towards you. If you expend too many resources, if you extend yourself too much towards these women, you will be left in an unfavorable position. Why was that so hard for them to say? Is Brittany Renner the bad guy? No more so than Fresh and Fit is the bad guy. They are both two different sides of the coin. Brittany Renner is creating a blueprint for women. Fresh and Fit are creating a blueprint for men. Simple. The fact of the matter is, who do you think you should be using this blueprint against? If Fresh and Fit came out on their platform and was like, you know what, just stop dating women your age. Go date 18, 19-year-old women, then that would be looked at unfavorably. And I'm pretty sure Brittany Renner would have been able to articulate why that's nasty. Why that's wrong. And it's like, if you chronicle Brittany Renner as just an average woman, then what she did is no longer wrong. Because PJ Washington could have ran into an average woman, and I don't think she would have been able to get a baby out of him. I don't think she would have been able to get an emotional connection from him that he thought was one thing that turned out to be something else. I don't think she would have been able to publicly make him look as bad as Brittany Renner publicly made him look. And that's where everybody really started getting sick of her. When she goes to the college campus and she's like, hide your son, she's making light of a situation that's not fair. But the thing is, when you're not a man and you haven't been in that situation before, you're never going to be in the situation of a PJ Washington. You can make light and you can make jokes of these situations. So now that's why the men who don't have the ability to sit across from Brittany Renner, when you get the chance to sit across from Brittany Renner, they expect for you to address that. Brittany Renner doesn't necessarily know how it feels to be a man. Brittany Renner was saying, oh, all men want is sex, this, that, and the third. They should have addressed that. No, the same way that you have multiple different things that women might want in relationships, and you talking about whether it be finance, whether it be emotion, whether it be attention, all this stuff, men are more complex than what you're trying to devalue us down to. It just say that we only want sex. PJ Washington wanted a wife. And the fact of the matter is, you knew if you weren't prepared to bring that to the table for him specifically, that you should have handled yourself differently. In the same way that we as men, we know that if we're not willing to give women the things that they want, we need to handle ourselves in a certain type of way, or else women are going to criticize us. Like, the whole thing could have been avoided if they just addressed the fact that it's like, you should have expected to be criticized from men in the same way that, you were being championed by women. It's what is sitting uneasy with me, and like I said, after I'm done with this, I'm gonna listen to the whole thing, because maybe they redeemed themselves. They acted starstruck, they acted ignorant, they acted oblivious to what is actually going on. When the reality of the situation is, it's not about Fresh and Fit and Brittany Renner, because none of us that are watching this is going to be in their situations. We're not, at least, in their situations now. The reality of the situation is how we're watching this reacts to how we interact with each other in our real lives. And that could be damaging to the demographic that they care about, men, and the demographic that women care about. So as opposed to having an open, honest conversation, because she seemed to be coming ready to have an open, honest conversation, they just want to sit down and try to backtrack. They didn't want to make it seem like they were talking about Brittany Renner specifically, because they felt like they didn't have a reason to talk about her specifically, almost as if they were clout chasing when they mentioned her, when it's like, no, the fact of the matter is, you have a very large platform and you have a lot of people who are following your blueprint, and it's harmful. So is it that y'all feel like y'all blueprint is also harmful, why y'all can't necessarily address that? It's just an unreasonable way to address things. Like, oh, you're just like every other woman. No, because she has like Brittany Renner can walk into a room full of celebrities and get attention. Most women can't do that. And when you are a woman who can walk into a room full of celebrities and get attention, the way that you interact with regular men, you have more of a hand up. You have more to leverage. Not to mention, Brittany Renner is vastly more attractive than the average woman. Like, I don't personally know more than 2 or 3 women that I would say, yeah, they're of the same caliber physically as Brittany Renner. And most guys don't. Nothing was said. It's like, of course, when you look at one person making points and another 2 people just sitting down wondering, she even said it herself, they're basically Tweedledee and Tweedledum. Like, y'all act like y'all don't have y'all own independent and original thoughts. Y'all could have used narratives from y'all personal lives to express how it's damaging the way that women interact with men. Because that's what it's really coming down to. If you're going to sit here and say, oh, we're just regular guys and you're just a regular girl, then talk about how regular guys and regular women interact with each other, and how people with platforms as large as y'all's have a certain responsibility to be realistic in the way that they address it. But that's just my thoughts on that. I don't think Brittany Renner is... I don't think that she got over as much as people are trying to make it seem like she got over. I don't think that she's as bad of a guy as people are trying to make her seem. I just think in the specific situation that got her the majority of the negative attention that she got, she was wrong. And I don't think that they properly addressed that. So if you disagree, you feel me, by all means, leave a dislike. Just argue in the comment section. Let me know why you feel differently than I feel. But that's just my thoughts on this.
The microphone is my mistress, I head out, I'm just venting. Fix your mouth like a dentist and you get stopped like a sentence. These niggas pouting and bitching, I'm just counting my Benjamins. Ain't announcing my mission, I just come out with a victory.